from Eisenstein's autobiography, where he writes about the influence of Orthodox communion on his movies.
From such moments springs my lifelong weakness for the ornate in religious services. The sunbeams cutting down through the smoke of incense, the standing columns of dust or mist, the luxuriant shocks of priestly hair from the priest in Potemkin to the religious process in Ivan the Terrible, and a passion for sacristy.
There's a lot here.
Oh my.
Sacristies.
Uh-huh.
Chasubles.
Uh-huh.
Dalmatics. Omophorions.
Uh-huh. And what was the other one?
I think in English it's just pronounced epitrachelion.
Amophorions and epitrachelions. All of these I include in my films.
The point of that quote being that, Eisenstein was as a prominent Soviet artist, an avowed atheist and communist. But I do think it's interesting and important what he points out here, the fact that there is an aesthetic quality that an Orthodox or even like a Catholic church service has, that I think, especially for someone who is raised kind of in a standard American sort of non-denominational Protestant upbringing, you are sort of taken by that in a way that you don't really. I mean, I remember going to church as a kid, and your kind of standard suburban American church is very bland. You would barely know you're in a church for much of it. You're in like a strip mall type thing.
It feels more like a DMV.
Right. Aside from, the sanctuary itself, most of the church doesn't seem very churchy, which to some people that would be great. But I think also there's a sense of, if you are trying to convey the majesty, the power, the awesomeness of what you're truly attempting to deal with here, there is something to be said for the grandeur, the production that goes into these services.
If you're trying to say our God is an awesome God,
he reigns from heaven above. Wisdom, power, and love. Our God, he's an awesome God, really. Until he killed Rich Mullins in that plane crash.
The other thing I was thinking about with that quote there is I don't have quite as much exposure to Soviet literature and art as you, but just reading like The Master and Margarita, there's half of the story is literally involving Jesus. Like, it's very interesting how much religion is worked into these stories, and the pop culture that it produces, that this society produces. Yeah,
later there's more where it kind of gets into that of Eisenstein playing that card of saying, I know what the audience is going to be familiar with. This is 1925. We have not successfully banned religion yet. So, that being the case, let's use some of that energy and sort of redirect it into something revolutionary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all the stuff he listed, the sacristy is like the place where the priest gets ready. I think Catholic churches have those too. The chasuble, I think it's one of the robes. I think the dalmatic is also one of the robes. The omophorion is like a stole that goes around the shoulders. That's what omophorion means, just like around the shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
Epitrachelion is around the neck. It's like another little scarf type thing. They wear a lot of stuff.
Some of this sounds like something they'd be looking for in an Avengers movie.
The ship's priest, one of the coolest scenes in the movie. The ship's priest appears at the top of the stairs. He's only in a few shots, but he's a very interesting character.
He has like a spectral quality about him.
Yeah, and that's very intentional, as we'll see in just a minute here.
He feels very out of place to all of the other characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, like when you first see him, like, it looks like you're looking at a ghost.
He looks like Moses in like the Ten Commandments movie, like the old one.
He has like this weird eye raise thing he does right before the shooting is supposed to start.
Like many actors in this and like the silent era, he got a very expressive face.
He does, and
eyes.
I think what I like about that eye, like the eye raise scene, is there's it's sort of an indifference, but also like a, well, what do you want me to do about it kind of look.
It's almost Trumpian, like when Trump got hit in the face with that microphone a few weeks ago. He did his little eyebrow raise. So the priest, he's raising his arms and he says, "Lord, bring the unruly to reason," like implying, yes, this is what needs to happen. Before they fire, Vakulinchuk cries out for them to stop. I think it's Vakulinchuk. He and Matyushenko kind of look really similar, so I can't always tell which one is which. They're both kind of like beefier, mustachioed guys. The priest ascends a staircase with a cross held in front of him, as if and he's holding it like it's a shield, like it's going to protect him.
It very much feels like a vampire movie for a second.
Yeah, and again, like there's lots of like not really veiled digs at the organized church by Eisenstein here. You know, this character being an obvious sort of caricature of what the church is in Russia at the time. It's a strange shot. The cross falls to the deck, his, you know, big Orthodox cross, and it sticks in the wood. Like
a sword.
If you dropped a knife or something and it just sticks there. I don't know what sort of bladed cross he's working with here, but that's what it looks like. Quoting here from the Deuss article again about Orthodox iconography in Potemkin.
The film blatantly uses such images to criticize the Russian Orthodox Church and its complicity in the Tsarist government's oppression of its citizens. An expected characteristic, given that the film is a commemoration of the 1905 Communist Revolution. From the anachronistic priest, whose appearance would be appropriate to the Old Testament, to the crucifix, which the priest wields as a weapon, to the communion plate, which reminds soldiers of their gross mistreatment, religious symbols and figures are overtly cast as controlling forces whose primary function is to help those in power maintain it.
So as they're dragging Smirnov, the doctor, the one who had approved the meat earlier, they're dragging him up the stairs. This is a great shot because he's like flailing. He grabs onto the big like anchor cable or something. Like,
yeah, the whole thing with Smirnov is great because it's so theatrical and dramatic. It feels like you're watching a stage play because he's grabbing onto everything. He's throwing his arms up. Like it's very captivating.
Yeah, I like how they're dragging him. He grabs the big thick like cable, and they're trying to untangle him from it, and then they just grab the whole cable and bring it with them.
Yeah, he very much feels like he's a wild animal, and it is like yeah, you almost see them looking like, all right, you're gonna hang on to that, we'll just pick that up too. Like dealing with an angry raccoon.
That'll probably sink also. Smirnov is yelling like for the priest because he sees the priest there, and this is so good. The priest cracks open one of his eyes to see what, and then he closes it again, pretends to be unconscious.
Can't trust the holy man.
So Vakulenchuk's body is laid out for public display, kind of like the body of another important Russian revolutionary who you can visit, with a sign saying "killed for a spoonful of soup" or a spoonful of borscht. I think the translation says "killed for a plateful of soup."
Yeah, I think that's what it said today.
But the actual sign, I'm pretty sure the actual sign uses the word loshka, like a spoon. So even less. Deuss highlights that this is one of several areas where religious imagery is used, not to be critical of the church, but to take positive aspects of the religion and reapply them to his own purpose.
In this case, we have a communist revolutionary who is a stand-in for Lenin, but is also revered as a religious martyr. Not only does the expected clash between an oppressive church and citizens seeking liberation occur, but it results in the forging of figures important to communism and orthodoxy. The leader of the revolt appears as a martyr, killed for his belief in and work for a more righteous way of life. By connecting his suffering to those of religious figures, Eisenstein taps into the emotions his audience likely felt for St. George, but redirects them to a communist hero.
So yeah, going back to that idea of like Eisenstein being an atheist, but also recognizing the power of religious belief.
I think that's like one of the I think we've kind of talked about this before, but it's one of the things with like the whole Reddit atheist crowd that's so annoying is like they don't have any appreciation for like the positive aspects of religion, and like it or not, there are some.
Yeah, or like why people would have a connection to this, why people don't react well to being called, you know, you're a stupid sheep for believing this.
Or like why they create beautiful art and buildings and things for it and the devotion that it requires.
So like Eisenstein here taking that feeling he knows his audience will have and sort of just redirecting it, saying, hey, if you're looking for someone who gave his life so that you could have it better, here's a real life one for you right here. So the scene here on the steps where a child falls down on the stairs with blood streaming from his head, and the panicking crowd runs over him. This is one of the scenes that was cut for the 1926, the Berlin, the international cut. Quoting here from Radunovich.
The portrayal of extreme violence, visually organized through the juxtaposition of close-ups of the boy's anguish, close-ups of his mother's horror, and medium shots of the panicking crowd, was moderated. In April 1926, cut to a few medium shots of the boy's lifeless body, a close-up of his mother's anguish, and a medium shot of the crowd.
The framing of the boy's death, which in the previous version conveyed high pathos, was rearticulated through the more distanced and less engaging medium shots.
First of a woman stumbling upon the boy's body, and then of a man making efforts to avoid stepping on the boy's legs. In other words, the informational aspect of the message is communicated, but its effective capacity to incite pathos is toned down.
Also cut from this part is the sequence around 51:30 in our version, where the woman is holding the boy's body. She's cut down by a volley from the soldiers. There's no one else in the shot aside from them. It's just her and the boy's body. She's holding up his body, and she's sort of pleading with him. She says, "Moему мальчику очень плохо," which is translated as "my boy is very ill," which is odd. I think a more accurate translation would be like, "My boy's in really bad shape," because he's clearly not ill. In the cut version, the soldiers are shown marching over their bodies, but there's no particular focus on how the bodies got there.
So it just indiscriminately happened in the chaos.
Yeah, this is like just another part of the crowd that got hit, which again is like still bad on its face, but it isn't the same as this version. So back to the topic of religious iconography, it isn't hard to see the intentional connection between this scene and, like the famous, Pietà scene that's depicted in a bunch of like Renaissance art and all kinds of art, showing the Virgin Mary holding Christ's body after his crucifixion, which isn't actually, it's not like a huge thing in Orthodox art, but like there's, a million versions of it in Catholic, European art.